Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Michael Sisco Show. We have a very special guest this week, and in the beginning of our Ortho Trad E-Girl series. Launching it is Bronwyn DeGraff. Why don't you, while I set up super chats, introduce yourself to the audience, Bronwyn?
All right. I guess I'm officially an Orthodox e-girl, but my name is Bronwyn DeGraff, and my Instagram is lavender.sage_. That's where I do a lot of my informative work on human trafficking and femininity and Christianity and a wide variety of topics like that, but mainly go pretty hard at human trafficking. And yeah, that's about it, among other things that I do. But
Don't you sell stuff? Don't you have a store?
oh yes, I do. I should plug the store. So I do have a Depop store, which is what I use right now to resell clothing of mine and clothing of my mom's. I want to pick up at the thrift store to make an income during this ridiculous time period of COVID. So it is at Vintage Maiden on Depop. That's how you can find me, and the link is usually in my Instagram bio as well.
Nice, nice. You're frozen on my screen, but the audio's coming in fine, so it'll make a great podcast.
Oh, great. Let me know when
maybe,
it unfreeze.
maybe refresh your camera. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Oh, there you go. Now you're good.
Am I
There
back?
you are. You're back. But
All right.
But I don't normally pray on streams, but since we're in dangerous territory with the whole e-girl thing, I think we'll start out with the prayer, So, be the helper of my soul, O God, for we walk in the midst of many snares. Deliver us from them and save us, for you are good and you love mankind. So, hopefully that saves all the simps from temptation. And let's see. Got a light crowd.
I don't think we'll be
simping. You don't think so? You don't think so? Maybe maybe the Ukrainian dress turns them off.
Yes. Vintage from Ukraine. Come to my wheat field. I will pick wheat for you and bake you bread like good wife. Yes.
Oh, but no. Or Aboroth. No simps in here. What?
Good.
No simps. But anyways, while we wait for a larger audience, come on, people. I couldn't promote on Telegram. I was told not to by Eugen, the chief of all Ortho Telegram life. Trying to keep the Turks out. But we got Ray the musician. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a simp.
I like Ray. Ray's a good guy.
He is. He's funny. But we are here. Let's just hop in. We are talking about something very serious. Talking about human trafficking, which I understand is a common theme on your channel. We promise that Bronwyn is not trafficked. She is a free woman. But he says you're awesome too, Bronwyn. You're awesome too.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Yes. Just keep simping, Ray. Keep simping. And if you wanna simp extra hard, send me a super chat. I promise I will give some of it to Bronwyn. I promise. Not. But we do know that human trafficking is a problem, but I think a lot of people don't quite understand the scope of it. So could you kind of put the issue into perspective for us, especially as it relates to United States and Europe, because I don't really care about the rest of the world.
Well, human trafficking is actually a huge problem. It should be one of our number one concerns as a nation, and it's a worldwide pandemic, really. So human trafficking has been around for hundreds of years, really. It comes off of slavery and using coercion and poverty to, have people make money for you. But the most recently checked number was that there is about, in the US and Europe alone, 20.9 million victims that they can account for, and about a quarter of that is children. And there's a couple countries like Romania and Moldavia are called the failed states of human trafficking. But don't be deceived, as most Americans unfortunately think that this is either a third world problem or a problem that does not affect US soil. America, according to, I'm just going to check my notes so I can give you guys accurate information. The World Population Review, the US is ranked as one of the worst countries in the world for human trafficking. That's also because we have a lot of money in the US and we have a lot of buyers. But so a lot of the ways that it happens is, for example, once we had the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a lot of orphanages that were overrun because many people left those former Soviet countries and fled in search of jobs because things were so bad. So they just abandoned their children and went out looking for jobs. So all of these children were put into orphanages or were just out on the streets. And then the orphanage owners and the people who ran them ended up working with traffickers and buyers that they would have the children ready to go, that like, oh, as soon as you're ready to leave the orphanage, go to this man and that woman, here's their number. And then these boys and girls would be trafficked. Or they would, apply for jobs, and maybe half the people that applied for the job, it would be real, and the other half would be taken somewhere else. They were often called yellow houses, and this is where you do the breaking down of the person. So there's many ways that trafficking works. One common misconception is people think that this is all ball and chain. Like, oh, boogeymen in vans, shady alleyways where they like kidnap people. But recent studies have shown that in our modern day, most people are trafficked by either a family member or someone that they know and trust. That could be a friend, that could be a distant relative, that could be your neighbor, or just someone who has come into your life and built a level of trust. So it is a big problem, to say the least. Just keep tabs on me if I get off topic. Do you have any questions so far?
I will coerce you into staying on topic.
All right.
I'm kidding. But like, what are the numbers in the US? Do you have that?
So the numbers in the US, it's a little bit difficult to get an exact number, but we have about 1,999 incidents annually, and this was just for the recent 2020. And that was just in the 6 months of 2020. So that was like when I last checked. But one of the reasons that makes it hard to check exactly how many people are victims of trafficking, how many traffickers there are in the US alone, is because you have to understand that a lot of people don't even report people who are missing. So if anyone over the age of 18 runs away or goes missing, the police aren't really able to look for them for longer than 48 hours sometime before they're just like logged away. And then if you break it down by certain groups, like let's say a lot of the illegal immigrants, for example, they are afraid to report if one of their children has been kidnapped or has not returned home because they are not here legally. So they are afraid to go anywhere near law enforcement. So that is a huge demographic of people that we cannot even get numbers on. And they are a huge part of the victim pool because one of the things that you have to understand, traffickers, the people who do trafficking, are highly intelligent people. Highly intelligent. These are not, crackheads or whatever, like Joe Schmoes. These people know exactly how to manipulate you. They know exactly who to target, who to take, who they can make the most money off. They don't go for a lot of like high risk people because obviously they don't want to get caught. So they know that these certain groups of people are more vulnerable than other groups. But that being said, it happens in each demographic. Like each community has its trafficked victims, even up into middle class white communities where we have discovered, and unfortunately, there's a lot of stories that have come out this year where girls were being sold by their parents and they weren't able to escape until maybe, well, one woman in particular, she was still being trafficked by her parents while she was married. And they would threaten her and say that, like, we'll hurt your husband, we'll hurt your children. So she would have to like sneak out or tell her husband she was going for a drive, or, having a a day to herself because she was tired as a mom and her parents were still trafficking her. She didn't get out until she was 24. So there's many different levels to it, and that's why it's actually hard to get an exact number, because like I said, nobody knew about her until now, because she was trapped since she was 11 years old.
Yeah, so some of these people aren't technically missing. They're
Exactly.
just being manipulated, and
So like
yeah.
we can get numbers on like missing persons. We know that a good number of children who are deemed runaways end up in trafficking. They either end up in drugs or trafficking. We also know that about 60% of domestic children who were trafficked victims, we found that they were once in the welfare system. So that's more trackable. And this is also another thing, like if any of you are interested, ever look up the place called Youth Village. That place became like a trafficking hub where it had all of these girls that, had come from really hard places, and then the staff members turned around and trafficked them. And this was supposed to be a safe haven. So we have those kinds of incidents. We have the ones that you can't trace. For example, there's a lot of stories that came out even just this year of like the stories of survivors, right? Where it would be their neighbor. Mom and dad thought the neighbor's kid was great and the neighbor's parents were great, and girl boy goes next door, and then eventually, because that person builds trust with their kid and they're not like checking in on exactly who these people are, and I'm talking about the parents, these people would then turn around and be like pimping out their kid. So that's another group that is very hard to trace until you get their survivor stories. So we have all these different levels of it, and that's why trafficking is actually so hard to beat and so hard to get an exact number on it, because there's so many different ways that people are enslaved.
Yeah. So most of it's obviously related to, I mean, it's the driving force is like a sexual market, right? More so than anything else. Okay.
So I can give you a quick overview of trafficking in general. So it's like a ridiculous amount. Oh, did I write down the number? I didn't. It was like it was like 66 billion 700 million thousand blah blah blah. Like so if you go to, let me make sure I get the website's name correct. It is worldcounts.org. That's where you can go to get up-to-date numbers on the amount of people in different situations. So like how many children are in slavery and how many children are trafficked here and how many women this, and that's where you can get all those numbers. But they were saying that like right now, just the amount of money that slavery has made was like 66 billion point blah 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 blah. I forgot to write the whole number down, but they have a really good breakdown. So when we talk about human trafficking, what we're talking about is actually a wide variety of things. So we have the trafficking of labor, which, and this about roughly about like 4.5 children are trafficked into child labor. So that's one form of trafficking. Then we have organ trafficking. This is where people are kidnapped or taken, or one incident that was discovered in Ukraine this year was there was a whole baby trafficking ring where they would come into the hospital room and tell the mothers that their baby had died, and they had actually taken the baby behind the door and, sold the baby for parts. The baby was alive, so these babies were being sold for organs. They do this to adults. So there's organ trafficking, there's weapons trafficking, there's drugs trafficking, and then there's the sex trade. Um, already? Already? That didn't take long. We're like 15 minutes in.
She's a quadroon, actually.
So we have the trafficking. About 24.9 million people are in forced labor. 15.4 million people are in forced marriages, and these are like marriages in other countries where it's beneficial to whoever married them off. You get paid a certain amount to marry this person off, or, you know, being married for green cards and citizenship and stuff like that. That's another form of trafficking. The sex trafficking trade makes up about 4.8 million, and that's worldwide. That's worldwide. So that's a lot of numbers there, guys. I don't know what else to tell you. I got off track. Where was I going?
No, that's good. So what would you say are some, like, what are some of the scenarios that people, I guess, aside from what you've already mentioned, like going to the next door neighbor, what are some other scenarios that someone may find themselves to be a victim of trafficking? Like, how does this go down?
So aside from, like I said, you know, being sold by your orphanage or applying to job applications, and this happens worldwide, but even in the US, like maybe a young girl finds an ad in the newspaper. One of the most common ones is modeling and photography. If it says modeling and photography, you need to do background checks on the address you're going to, on the person's name, on everything, and make sure they're actually legit. That's one of the most common traps. Modeling and photography gets a lot of girls worldwide, no matter what. Oh, come be in my music video. I'll make you famous. Hollywood, stuff like that. Be an actress, apply here. You know, that's one of the scenarios. And then there's a lot of women have experienced being trafficked by their boyfriend, and how this would go down, because this seems insane, right? And this is where a lot of people get confused, and they're like, wait, what? No, she's not held against her will. So how it goes down is basically the boyfriend gets you to fall in love with him, wins your trust, then he starts having issues like, oh, his car broke. This is an account of a real story, actually, where like she was like, yeah, his car started to break, bills became hard, and you know, I just loved him so much. And then he started to suggest things like, oh, you know, we're going to be like starving, maybe you do this. And then she found herself, you know, he was pimping her out. He was finding buyers for her. And then it just kept going and going. And she was trapped in that for about 7 years. So another thing is prostitution. Is prostitution trafficking, or is it voluntary? This is a big question. This is a big issue for a lot of people. Prostitution arises when you have someone who's in a situation where they're kind of, you know, at their last straw. They either have an over amount of bills, someone is dying, they have to feed their kid, or they're out on the streets, whatever. It's called a form of coercion, where you are promising the someone, you know, money for these deeds. If they had another choice, they wouldn't be there. But what happens with a lot of things is a lot of prostitutes that we think we see, they're like, oh, like she's walking down the street just fine. She could run away, right? She's not being held against her will. She's not one of the girls chained to the bed. She's held in here. One of the saddest things that I found out when I went down the trafficking hole is that 9 out of 10 women who were actually rescued from trafficking went back because they were so mentally damaged that they could not come back into society. They didn't know anything else. Everything was erased. The traffickers and the manipulators usually beat them down that they are less than even a dog, that their worth is so low that like this person who's holding the power over them is the only one who values them, is the only one who knows how to take care of them. So they break them down so bad. It's like full on gaslighting. So there's a lot of these manipulation tactics that go into it. And that's why we, as you know, outsiders, we see prostitute and think like, oh, well, she's acting promiscuous and she wants to be there and she's, you know, on the streets. There are very few prostitutes who are there. And then we've also come to find out that people who do willingly put themselves either to become, you know, prostitutes or, you know, other sorts of things were sexually abused when they were children. So it's just this kind of pattern of victimology where like they were either a victim in their past, or because of how they're manipulated, they are now a victim, or they're the ones who are literally chained to the wall. Yes, and Stockholm syndrome as well. They're both very similar to gaslighting. And then obviously the other scenario is just plain kidnapping. This is actually the more rare, like this is the one that like everyone thinks it goes down like, like that. So it's easier to get people in a form of manipulation because then you don't have to fight and break them down so much. But there is a good percentage where they do pull up in the minivan, they grab you because like they see a girl they want, they have to have that girl, they may have offered her money, something, and she's like, nope, I'm fine, I don't want it. And they will do the dash and grab, and then that girl usually has to go to what they call in the Slavic regions a yellow house. I don't know what they call it in the US, but it's a house where they literally spend a lot of time breaking you down until you will not leave them. And then that leads into another point of, if someone does escape, why it's so hard to escape and why these people have trust issues is because a lot of the victims who have finally got out said that they tried to escape multiple times. They would run into the arms of law enforcement or run into a hospital, and then or they would run down the street and they would flag down a car, and then they were taken right back to that same place. This is why like trafficking worldwide is so hard to control because Border Patrol is on the take, the police are on the take, we have government officials on the take. The president of Kosovo is a known trafficker. So he's obviously not going to do anything about it. He's like, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Imagine my shock.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah. And who I wonder what government helped set that all up. I don't know. Can't think about it. So what is the connection between the pornography industry and human trafficking?
Mm-hmm. So what porn does is really vicious. Porn drives trafficking because porn sets up the buyers. One thing, just a short thing, one thing that Sweden did to lower the problem of sex trafficking was they stopped arresting the victims they stopped arresting the women, and they only arrested traffickers and the buyers, and then their numbers plummeted, just went down. Once you start targeting the buyers, then that's where the problem gets eliminated. So what porn does, and the dangerous thing about porn is it said about like 86% of children find porn unintentionally on the internet at ages young as 8 and 7, and then can be addicted by the time they're 11. So remove women from that occasion, and if we just focus on the male demographic, if men from the age of like 11 are constantly consuming porn, just slowly and slowly, and you start engaging with it and blah, blah, your view of women is completely shaped by porn. And also, there was another seminar done about like what the top rated porn searches are. The top rated porn searches are 86% RAPE of underage girls. So under age 18, it was like 60%, 73% with weapons involved, and 43% of having the women drugged. So those three things right there already set you up to be okay with trafficking, because you're already participating and watching fantasy that has the one person being taken against their will, which is exactly what trafficking is. So really what porn does in the long run, just to put it plain and simple, is it grooms men to be buyers. So it fuels the trafficking industry and it supplies it. The more men you have addicted to porn, the more men you have getting to that point where porn isn't enough and they need to reenact in real life, the higher the demand for trafficking. So the two work together. Like porn just really propels the trafficking industry, and that's why it's actually an even bigger deal nowadays than ever in the past, because in the past you didn't have porn and you had a lot of men who were like, no, I'm going to stay with my wife and my kids and stand up for the family. We had a lot of societies that even if they weren't, necessarily Christian, it was still very much like, my wife, my kids. Yeah. But what porn does is it brings it into everyone's homes and desensitizes your mind to how you should view women and how you should view another person, really. And that has a huge impact on society. So that's why porn is so dangerous, and that's why the two are linked. But it really does. So one of the things they saw was, because, you know, one lady was saying, her name is Gail something. I forgot her last name, but she works a lot with, fighting the porn industry. So she said, when we have young boys from the age of 8 that are only looking at violent sex, right? Because that's, if you go to a porn site, and that's the first couple things that show up, is usually something that's dehumanizing toward the female in the video, or violent or unrealistic or very like rough, brutal, whatever. And they even throw these words into the title, right? Anyone who's been on a porn site knows what I'm talking about. You can't get through without seeing some sort of violent title. So if that's what our young boys are looking at, then they're literally just being slowly groomed to be okay with violence towards women, to be okay with going out and committing RAPE themselves, or being totally desensitized that when they get to the point where they have the opportunity to buy it and pay for it, they're fine. They don't think of that person as a person. They don't even stop to consider that that person may be a victim, being held against their will, etc. They're just like already there. And then, oh, I just remembered another point. But if you have a question, go ahead.
I mean, no, I was just gonna say, so it's like basically a double victimization. It's the getting males addicted at a very young age. Basically, they're creating the buyers. So, I mean, is there any evidence to suggest that that whole cycle is orchestrated purposely, or is it just kind of just the state of degeneracy that are that we're in, that we find ourselves in with the internet, advent of the internet and whatnot, or is that purposefully done to fuel the trafficking industry?
Well, one thing that has to be understood here is that trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and even the porn industry made like, Hollywood made like $5.8 million one year, and then the porn industry made 13.6 million, which is their rival. Like Hollywood wishes they could be the porn industry because they make so much money. So where a lot of money is involved, there's going to be a lot of push. So I would say it's a bit of both. Like, Hollywood has done such an amazing job at pushing things on our society and our young people, grooming us from a very young age to be more open sexually, to be involved in all this stuff, to be accepting, to be more accepting of seeing sex on the screen, which just leads you to going and watching porn because then your mind wants to see more. There's a lot involved in it, but the main thing is money. Like, this is a huge money making operation. It is rampant. Like, it's literally a pandemic. Like, literally. Like, and that's one of the reasons it is so hard to fight, is because there's so many powerful people on the take here. There's so many politicians and state officials and sheriffs and what have you, all people all down the line getting huge handouts to keep this going, to turn the other cheek, because it makes so much money. Even Pornhub themselves makes billions of dollars. You think they want to let that go? Like, no. So the main thing here is money. They found a way to exploit the common people. So they found a way, okay, we can use the sexual desires of men to gain massive profits, and we will do it at the expense of women and children and just whatever. It's making us so much money because the traffickers get all that money. Like, even the ones who are called pimps, where they give a woman a cut of it, she might get like 15%, maybe 10, you know. The majority of the cut is going to the pimp and then whoever he answers to. Like, they are lining their pockets and getting rich, and they will find a girl that they can enslave for the longest period of time and make the most money off of, and then discard her.
Yeah. So how complicit is Pornhub? Do they know that they're posting like underage women or women who are being coerced or forced to do this stuff? How much do you know about that?
So here's the thing about Pornhub and porn sites in general. First of all, a lot of people will say, like, well, okay, I won't buy prostitutes. I won't, I'll just sleep with women from clubs who are obviously willing. But why should I give up porn? You cannot verify that every single video you're watching is of a person who is there of their own free will and actually being paid. That is a huge gray area. There's so many videos, more videos than you can even handle, that you cannot verify that those are actual paid actors. So a lot of what you're watching on Pornhub or on any porn site is trafficking. You are partaking in trafficking by watching porn, because you literally have no guarantees unless there's like one or two porn stars that you definitely know are like porn stars, like, yeah, they chose it, she's so like here for it, she gets paid so much money. That is the minority. Like, they're like this small. Okay.
Yeah, and then most of them are drug addicts, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
like you can't convince me that they're completely voluntary as well. There's some sort of enabling of something going on with those. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which is why, I mean, if you just Google the average life expectancy of a porn star, it's like 35. Like crazy.
Barely. Porn star and prostitution, it has the highest mortality rate, actually. I mean, obviously, prostitution has a higher mortality rate than porn stars because you literally have to pick up strangers and they might kill you. Or you're going to catch a disease and that's going to kill you, or the drugs that your trafficker has you on is going to kill you. So it's one of the world's most dangerous jobs, which is
Yeah,
crazy. But
I think it's probably mostly attributable to the drug use and the abuse, probably. 'Cause
well,
I don't think most of the STDs are as fatal, but
it's the drug use and the abuse, because again, we have to remember, what do porn sites promote? They promote violence against women. So the culture of sex that we have in our modern day society, vanilla is bad. Vanilla is laughed at, like, oh, you're so lame if you have regular sex, I guess, if you want to call it that, like wholesome stuff, right? Um, because all porn promotes is doing extreme, 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 extreme. And then you get into that, like, stuff where you need safe words. And that's what a lot of these women are forced into, and it ends up killing them.
yeah.
Or, yeah, they get literally picked up by a serial killer or something like that. But,
Yeah, I think Anna makes a good point here.
mm-hmm,
Kind of, she brings up radical individualism, which leads to consumerism. I
mm-hmm,
think that's kind of our culture itself fuels this sort of behavior in a way, instead of and the continuous breakdown of the family and communal life and just any sort of
mm-hmm.
communal ties over the past however many decades this has been happening, I'm sure contributes to the problem. So,
Yeah, amazingly, well, the more research I did, the more I found out that porn contributes to in the breakdown of our society. And one of the things that came up is, like, if you know, a poll of asking like the general public if they believe in love, was the answer was very low. Most people in our day and age and our age groups do not believe in finding true love. And Exodus Cry did a very good documentary called Sexual. It was called Sexual Revolution. Yeah, I forgot the rest of the title. Sorry, guys. But don't worry, I'll post about it. If you just look up Exodus Cry, you can see the two documentaries they did, which are extremely informative. The first one is called Nefarious, A Merchant of Souls, and that one you can find for free on YouTube. It's about an hour long, and it will change your life. Do not watch in front of children. But it's very important to know about and understand, even if it's a hard pill to swallow. They are a Christian-based organization, by the way, so they really, really went deep to get to the root of the problem, and they traveled around the world. But one thing they did in their other documentary, which is on Netflix, is they showed about like the culture of our young people, and they were talking specifically about spring break and hookup culture, and talking about what people who are going through college are exposed to and told. How the majority of college students do not believe in finding true love. the men and the women don't believe in each other. They believe that like, oh yeah, men are just out to use us and sleep with us, and like we as women to just sleep with them and have all the fun we can. It's this total psychological breakdown. Like, you're not going to find happiness, you're not going to find wholesomeness or anything when you're just constantly using each other. You're just use, and then bye, you know. But
Yeah.
it runs rampant. It's really, really bad.
Yeah. To shift gears back to what you kind of hit on a little bit, you were talking about the massive amount of money and profit, and you kind of hinted at let's not get completely unoptical here, but who are these people that are profiting? Are they? I guess we can, in a general sense, call them elites, but what are their ties to our actual, I guess, oligarchical leaderships and our government? And how deep does this go? What does the evidence suggest to you?
That's something I can't give concrete answers on, because the people who have looked that deep have ended up dead. Like, just point blank. There was even a mother who was killed last year when she went to the FBI after discovering a bunch of information about whose pockets were being filled in the trafficking thing, and when she went to the FBI and then she was killed. So that's one of those things that it's like, if you find the answer, everything will be shut down. Not to sound crazy, guys, but it really is. It's very, again, we have to understand that when there's big money involved, there's a lot of power. These people are not just sitting out there chilling, you know, like, oh yeah, anybody knows. Like, no, they're protected. They have, I mean, we can use Epstein as a perfect example. Like, the amount of elites on his flight log, the amount of people that visited his private island, just shows you that, you know, all those people that, oh, you know, we love like this football player and that celebrity and that politician and blah blah blah. Look where they were going. That's what the people that you were putting your faith in and like putting posters of them on your walls, that's where they were going. And that's what they were partaking of. You have no idea what. You have no idea.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's any doubt at this point that the FBI itself, I mean, is a criminal institution. From the very get-go, it was basically just a blackmail operation from J. Edgar
Yeah.
Hoover. So why anybody ever thought that changed? And intelligence agencies have they used it's well documented that they would use underage women and such against the Soviets as a kind of as a method of espionage. So I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they're probably still complicit, and that might explain why they sat on a laptop for over a year that has pictures of underage women on it. Some
Mm-hmm.
of whom I have on good authority were actually politicians' daughters, and these politicians are still shilling for the people responsible. So if that's not trafficking, yeah, trafficking
It
your own
is.
daughter. So
Well,
looks
you
like we
know,
have a
what's the question?
looks like we have a question from. Oh, not a question. Do you do what you willst shall be the whole of the law? Coincidence, accountability to your family, your Christian community, to God, and to God is lost by design. That's true. Um, yeah, the intel community at large is a rogue asset. Yeah.
The intel community. Yes.
Yeah, and I think the FBI is probably the worst. Um, them and this like, well, I guess the CIA is pretty cruddy too.
I've been
Um,
told multiple times by people that you can't go to the FBI um, when it comes to trafficking, because there's people who came to me in the DMs several times and said like they discovered a ring in their neighborhood, or they know about this guy, whatever, and they went to the FBI and then threats were made against their family, and they even had to like move from the state and stuff. Now I can't verify that all of these people are like legit, but that was just a constant reoccurring theme of getting like these kind of stories and messages. So I would say there must be something to it. I definitely wouldn't feel good going to the FBI. If you want a really, really good group of people to go to, it's called Operation Underground Railroad. These guys go into the mouth of the beast. So it's a group of men and volunteers who are, some of them are ex-military, some of them are ex-FBI, like the ones who are actually good and saw the corruption and realized they couldn't do anything well in the FBI. And they volunteer and they put their lives on the line to go to these parties, these fashion shows, these events. They're called trafficking events, and they pretend to be buyers. And this is literally life or death, because if the traffickers find out that you're not a real buyer, like, you will be killed. And over the years, they have extracted numbers and numbers of children and young women from these things. And this is right here in the United States, Operation Underground. You can support them by donating, by spreading awareness about their organization to others, just supporting them in general. They have a lot of resources on their site. They also have ways to donate to the victims that they rescue. And they give update stories as well, unlike on some of their victims. Like, one girl finally was able to celebrate her birthday and they gave her a puppy and things like that. So Operation Underground is literally out there, like, in the heat, as it were.
Yeah. I know, we all like to, some of us on the right can get kind of discouraged about President Trump and whatnot. But I think one thing that we might want to highlight going into the election in 9 days or 8 days, whatever it is now, Trump has done quite a bit for human trafficking, which might be why the establishment hates him so much. Can you kind of get into what Donald Trump has done?
So I don't have everything, but I know recently he gave about $35 million to aid the victims of human trafficking, and that's like housing, finding them jobs, clothing, food. And then also in the very beginning of his administration, after he was elected in 2016, literally about 2 months in, he had roughly 14,000 traffickers and pimps arrested, finally, that the FBI were like sitting on. So and that was just in the first like 3 months of his, administration, that he's been working on that from the beginning. And that was stuff I didn't know until this year, because, it's not spoken about on the media. And obviously there's a lot going on, so we don't hear everything. But when I specifically got into committing time to trafficking this year, I saw that he's done a lot to make sure that these people are picked up, these people are locked up, these people are actually put away and put in prison.
The media is going to protect
the
their own. The media is going to protect their own, so of course they're not going to cover human trafficking. Wink, wink, nod, nod.
Well, I know one very telling sign is the fact that when it does come to politics, the left says that the conservatives, that we are conspiracy theorists for, running a campaign called Save the Children, and that, like, oh, we're using children as political gain to say that, like, oh, see, like, Trump is helping save the children and women who are trafficked, yet they say nothing about victims of trafficking. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Do you think that the wall at the southern border, will that be helpful to quelling human trafficking?
It would probably be helpful. I mean, Trump just brought up coyotes in his last debate, and, the internet freaked out about it. But Trump is very aware of trafficking. And one of the things that happened down at the border, even under the Obama administration, was these people were showing up claiming that children were theirs, and they were not theirs. They were traffickers. They were bringing children from across the border into America. And then once they got into America, God knows what was happening to these children. It was straight up trafficking. And Obama didn't do anything about it. And Trump tried to do something about it. And that's one of the reasons he wants a wall, is because that's what these people, sorry if that offends anyone, but you have to understand that not everybody coming from another country is a good person. So there are people in other countries that want to bring ugly things here. They want to bring children from their countries and sell them to American buyers. Why? America has the most money. We have tons of money. People from all over the world are brought here and sold.
Mac Pete says Trump has recovered more trafficked American children than any other president.
Amen. He absolutely has.
And I know that there was a recent something, maybe like a month ago, I remember there's been
Operation
a couple.
Not Forgotten.
Yeah. Can you
The
do you know
U.S. Marshals.
Do you know anything about that? Can you give us some deets on that?
I only know of the headlines of the articles, but that Operation Not Forgotten is another operation similar to Operation Underground Railroad, except they are more like officially with the U.S. Marshals. And they recovered 39 children in, I think it was Georgia. It was one of the southern states. Don't quote me on which one. But yeah, they were able to finally bust a trafficking ring there and save 39 children. And then they went on to bust another trafficking ring in another state, like shortly after that. So that's another operation that's ongoing. It's because Trump has, given them the funding.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
like the Savannah Act.
You would think that this would be a bipartisan issue, but the fact is, one side is actually completely evil and one side is good. So, if any issue has ever made that clear, it is this one. So yeah, that whole you can't use that line. Oh, well, you're pro-life till you're alive. No, you still traffic them, assholes. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah. It looks like this gentleman, Brian Whitaker, wants to get in touch with you. I know he's a politician in Delaware. Apparently works with this is a big issue, important to him. So we'll see, Brian. I'll talk to her, see if she wants to chat with you.
Did I see something about Newark there? Did it say Newark, New Jersey?
No, Newark, Delaware. It's Newark, not Newark. Newark. Yeah. If you go to Delaware,
in New Jersey, it's Newark.
yeah, in Delaware, it's Newark.
Okay.
Spelled the same though. Spelled the same. But Delawareans will get very upset if you go there and you pronounce it the wrong way. And then they wonder why nobody in the rest of the country cares about them. But JK, JK, we all love Delaware.
It'll be nice.
Delaware
State.
totally exists. It's totally real. Promise.
It's pretty there.
It's true. I like Delaware, honestly. I enjoyed my time there. The people are not very cryptic. They will tell you how they're feeling, which I appreciate. But so aside from voting for Donald Trump on November 3rd, and we know that we can donate to Operation Underground, what else can our viewers do if they want to help with the human trafficking? What can they do to help?
Well, one other organization, which is the Christian-based one, is called Exodus Cry, and they have a lot of resources for people to get involved. So one of the things is there's several different ways you can become involved. You can become an abolitionist, and that means that when laws and bills are coming up, then the abolitionists will come out and like vote for the ones that are going to help fight human trafficking and slavery. And they also have ways to donate directly to victims again, which is a good way because there's different levels. Some people want to be very hands-on and involved, but that comes with its own set of dangers because one thing to be aware of is, listen, guys, you're not going to go out on the street and just rescue a woman from a pimp. They will fight back. They will try and like find you. So there's people who take the risk of doing the housing and things like that. But that's why we need more resources because we need like protection and we need donations for places that actually do house the women and children coming out of that because we oftentimes have to protect them from the very people that were keeping them because they will try and take them back. But if you want to be, from the safety of your home, there's donating to healthcare kits, clothing, food, helping them get jobs, stuff like that. And then also Exodus Cry, additionally, if you are a member of a church and you have a church where you could possibly, set up a meeting, they have resources and pamphlets for you to be able to give out to your church community and hold like basically, similar to like a Bible study, but you could hold like little classes and they actually have classes for that. Maybe twice a year, they give like a class on how to educate people on trafficking and, be an advocate and, get your church community involved. So they have a lot of good resources like that. And then the main thing I can say, one thing I learned from listening to the testimonies of so many victims was prayers, okay? Prayers help them so much because one hard reality everyone needs to understand is we are not going to save them all. We are not going to save them all. We're not going to save every child, especially the ones in labor and the sex slavery. Like, it is going to kill them. Like, they're not going to get out of their dungeon. Those are the people, especially in the Orthodox Church, you know, when we hear the litany and it says, you know, when we pray for those who are held captive against their will and stuff, like, we need to specifically remember to pray for them and be a voice for the voiceless. That is so important. One thing that, like, the people who did get out, like, they said just knowing or hearing sometimes when they were being passed from one place to another that there was people out there speaking about their situation, you know, trying to get something done, made them felt heard, and like they knew that they might not get out, but maybe there will be less victims in the future. But the other thing that was a common theme that I saw was they said that, like, when they hit those lows where they wanted to commit suicide or just wanted to be over, like, Christ came to them. They had moments, like the ones who got it, they had moments where they said, like, God was there. They felt the prayers of others. God came to them when they were suffering alone, you know, held captive, tied up, not able to get out, being punished, whatever it was. So, like I said, we aren't going to save every single person because this is a worldwide pandemic. You know, maybe we can lessen it in America and then we can start helping other countries to lessen it. But you have to understand, in some countries, it's a part of the culture. One perfect example is Cambodia. It is perfectly socially acceptable that parents sell their children as young as 7-year-olds. Men come right into the village. Every other parent knows everyone's selling their kids. They're buying TVs. They're not working. They have children to sell them. So how do we fight trafficking in a culture that is a part of their culture? So that's why prayers, you know, it's so important, because we can't save everyone, but our prayers can help ease their souls. Our prayers can ask God to go and give them some peace, to ease their suffering, to give them freedom.
Yeah, and
So
I think
that's the most.
I just want to get this out. You know, 80% of males, I think, in this country are addicted to porn. One thing, practically, in addition to prayers, that we could literally do to almost completely eliminate human trafficking, is just quit porn.
Yep.
Quit feeding the industry. Quit paying for sex in any capacity. So whether that and turning on Pornhub, even though it's free, is actually paying for sex because you are fueling the advertising, and that's how they make their money. So you're not being a good Samaritan by consuming what you think is free porn, because it is not free. You are the reason that the advertisers are there giving Pornhub money. And then that's how the traffickers get money, from the views. So you're still,
Exactly.
if you go on that website, you are contributing, and that goes for any site. We are, you know, it is a struggle for men. Most of us were exposed at extremely young ages. There are groups out there that will help you quit porn. There's Covenant Eyes, which is a good system online. You can download it on your computer, get an accountability partner. That way, you know, it will block porn, but if you try, even if you try, it will alert your accountability partner. So I think that's a good system. But there are also addiction groups you could go to that are free. I can't remember the name of them, but they
There's a
will
lot.
they will help you with pretty much any sort of anything that you consider an addiction. But I think those are useful too for a lot of people. Anyways, let's get to something a little more serious. Are you in fact part African?
All right, I'll answer that question in 1 second, because I have one more thing to add that I think we should cover, and that's the OnlyFans.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
one other way people can contribute is, don't be a simp and buy girls' accounts on OnlyFans, because again, that's another thing, just like pornography, you have no actual way of verifying that the OnlyFans accounts are being run and monitored by the women themselves. And even so, we don't want to encourage the women of our society, of our society to think that the only way that they can become successful and buy their own homes and apartments is by exploiting themselves. Self-exploitation is extremely harmful to the heart and the mind. So we don't want to encourage women or men to even do that willingly, to purposely, exploit yourself. But again, OnlyFans is something else that, like, how can you tell me that the photos that are being posted on there and that the money on this account is actually going to the person that's in the pictures? That could very easily be a trafficked victim. I mean, we see how much money people are making on OnlyFans. Obviously, we do see the people who are like, yeah, I quit my job and blah, blah, blah. But this is another account that will quickly become a problem where you're not going to be able to tell the difference between who's real and who isn't.
Anna says, "No e-girls, no e-girls. We're gonna have to boot you off the program, Bronwyn."
We got to tell the e-girls to get jobs or get married, not OnlyFans. But
just to be clear, when we call Bronwyn an e-girl, we're joking. We're joking.
I'm a mom, guys.
Simps pay for sex, guys. You're worth more than that. That's also true. It's degrading to your as a man. It is also degrading for you. It's degrading masculinity to fucking pay. To freaking send money to this girl on the freaking OnlyFans or whatever you're sending. That's degrading the masculinity. Just don't do it.
Absolutely.
I
mean,
anyway,
you're literally falling for a trick.
Yeah, like, come on. Like, she's not gonna like you. She's not gonna do anything. She's not gonna meet you in real life other than to maybe sell herself for sex. You're not gonna have a meaningful relationship, and you're just gonna feel dirty and even more more lonely after you realize that this is not a fulfilling experience. So there's nothing that's going to give you long-term fulfillment. Just try and improve. If you feel like that's the only way you get female attention, improve yourself as a person. Make something focus on yourself and making yourself better first. And then eventually you're going to get a real girlfriend, which hopefully turns into a wife. And then you can have kids.
Amen.
And have a fulfilling life. Anna says, we love Bronwyn. She isn't an e-girl. We agree. Brian Whitaker says DeGraff is fantastic. So
I think one more important point to drive home for the men to not use porn is that I had the let's see. So other than porn driving the sex slave industry, another thing that it drives is causing men who wouldn't normally, had they never been exposed to this, but calling them to fall into child sexual abuse. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Like, do you want to become an abuser of children? Because porn definitely perpetuates pedophilia. I don't know if we're going to get doxxed for saying that word, so I'm trying not to get you doxxed. They're very sensitive about words.
Yeah, well, it's an orientation now, so
Yeah.
But Amelia Campbell says, find someone who's going to love you for you. God will send you the right one at the right time. True, but you still should be focusing on improving yourself spiritually, most importantly, spiritually. And, just don't be a complete loser. But but don't feel like you're a loser just because you don't have a partner right now. Like, focus on yourself. Improve spiritually, emotionally, physically. Go to the gym, lift weights. If you don't have a trade, you don't have to go to college, but get a trade. Or even if you have a job, sometimes people will feel self-conscious or maybe ashamed of the job that they have. Like, let's say you work in fast food. Who cares? Honestly, you can become a man, you can make a career out of fast food. You can become a manager and make a decent salary. You become a general manager. Don't feel like you're a loser because you work at McDonald's. We need those people, and you can make a career out of it. No, I'm serious. People think that they have to go get in debt to be in college and get a college degree. and then you get out and you make the same amount as a manager at McDonald's effectively, even if your salary is higher, but you have to pay back all this debt. I think you would have been better off staying at McDonald's, to be honest. So that's just part of my just don't be ashamed. There's honorable work that you don't have to be ashamed of. You can work your way up at a restaurant and actually make it into a real career and a life. So we hit
honestly,
on a
having
lot of
job is honorable. So there you go.
yeah. Just don't be ashamed to work. Like, just get a real job. Trust me, working at Dunkin' Donuts is more honorable than OnlyFans. Okay, that's for the girls.
For
That's for
sure.
the girls. That one's for the girls, but for the guys too. Don't be ashamed of working. Like, just get a job, and do a good, like, take pride in whatever work you're doing and do it to the best of your ability. Maybe you'll get promoted and you can, whatever. Have you been hitting the weights, Michael? Actually, you know what? I do lift. But I'm never gonna have 6-pack abs because I love Taco Bell. So maybe after I get married and my wife is responsible for my diet, maybe then I'll get ripped abs. But until then, I can't stop eating the Taco Bell. So maybe when Bronwyn's setting me up with one of her trad female friends, she can say, "Hey, look, so he lifts weights, but he's not gonna have the abs until you feed him right." So Anna says the no fat movement has a lot of organized propaganda against it. I'm a fascist. That's true. Apparently it's a right-wing, far-right position to just oppose the P word and trafficking in general. So
oh yeah.
So,
I forgot. They call themselves MAPS.
Really?
Do you know what MAPS are?
No.
MAPS is minorly attracted peoples.
Oh geez, let's not talk about. I don't even want to talk about it. It's fucking. This is making me curse. Like, I'm cursing. Sorry.
Well, if you're gonna curse, this is a good reason to curse, really. But yeah, I interviewed one of them one time because I found one of their accounts where they were like, "Oh, come here to ask all the questions you want," and I was like, "I need to understand what this MAPS thing is," and they're like, "MAPS do not support pedophiles. MAPS are people who are just attracted to underage folks, but we do not act on it. It's not something we can change." Blah 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 blah.
Well, no,
the
I mean,
comment sections are pretty brutal to them, but
it's like literally a mental illness, and you need help. That's what it is.
But again, reoccurring theme. I noticed in their comments when they were commenting back to other people, like some of the members of this MAPS group are like 17, 16. I really wanted to ask them, how long have you been watching porn? Like, if you weren't watching porn from the age of 8, would you be a MAP?
Yeah, well, porn itself is linked to depression and anxiety, which is why we have such high levels. Might contribute to why we have such high levels of depression and anxiety in this country.
Well, among other things.
And we'd probably also have less school shootings and stuff if we weren't watching porn. Like, I really like a lot of this literally comes down to porn. Like, it is a public health crisis that needs to be eliminated. We need to take this seriously. Oh yeah, Twitter allows porn. Like, seriously, they won't allow you. You're not allowed to call pedophiles mentally ill, but you
no, you're not.
You can post yourself having sex. You can do that. Yeah.
It's a rough age. It really is. I mean, all ages had their things, but it's definitely a rough age.
Yeah, but now it's time to get to the real serious subject. Are you in fact part African?
Well, I'm like less than a quarter African, guys. I've got some Congo in me and some other African countries that I never heard of before until I looked at my ancestry. Everything else, Anglo-Saxon. Sorry, y'all. I'm not that African, but
But anyways, Brian keeps asking this. So if somebody is a victim and they fear arrest, what should they do?
If you fear arrest and you're a victim, you have to seek out the safe haven places,
Yeah. So which
like,
we already mentioned them, like Operation Underground, right?
yeah, you could go to Operation Underground, you could reach out. There's so many places. I have to actually sit down one day and compile like a thorough list, because what I like to do is check these places, because I don't want to tell you about a place where, it ends up being like Youth Village, where all the money is going towards, and they're actually just like trafficking the people again and stuff like that. So I like to give some places time to make sure that they're like not shady. But that's why I only mentioned those two right now. But there's a lot of shelters and things like that, and I know they're not the best. But this is something that, when we think about voting and what we want to change in our communities and stuff, this is something that needs to be considered. Like, you should look for politicians and mayors and governors who actually bring this up or push them to bring it up. And basically what happens is, especially when you're an abolitionist, the more people you get on board, the louder our voice gets and the less we can be ignored. So if there's more and more of us telling all our governors and our mayors and our counties that, hey, we want a shelter, we want a place for these people, then they will actually start doing something and talking about putting funding towards. But if no one's talking about it, if no one in the community is saying like, hey, or if no one is volunteering, that's another thing. Like, people have to be willing to volunteer, to take some time out of your day to either go like help at the shelter or, organize a charity run, something like that. You can't just always be relying on others. And that, I think, is a big problem in our society as well. It's always thinking that, well, someone else will take care of it. No,
Yeah.
it's you. We need you to take care of it today, right now. Like,
Yeah.
what else
Yeah.
can I say?
Agreed. The least we can do is make a YouTube video.
Exactly.
But but yeah, no, this is probably not substantial enough to be honest. But anyways, closing question for most of my guests, and when I don't forget, favorite book. Make a book suggestion. You can only pick one. It can't be the Bible.
It can't be the Bible. Well, my favorite book is A Cloud of Witnesses, Father Arseni. And it's the second book to the first book was called Prisoner and Priest, Father Arseni. So this is the second book called A Cloud of Witnesses, Father Arseni. You can find it on Amazon for $20. And it's the compilation of the stories of Father Arseni's spiritual children. Little background, he was a priest during the Soviet Union who was in concentration camps for about 18 years. And just amazing, amazing. This book changed my life. I recommend it to everyone, even if they're not Orthodox. It is an amazing insight to how Orthodox Christian life should be lived and what real people look like living it. Like the transformation stories of his spiritual children, where they came from, who some of them were before they became Orthodox, is just amazing. So that's my number one book.
Apparently, we look like Hogwarts professors.
Oh, wait. Okay. I was just telling someone last night, like, I woke up with my bed head this morning, like, my hair this morning, guys, Bellatrix Lestrange. I was vibing that this morning. I was like, that's who I look like right now.
Well,
I know she's a bad guy.
and on that note, we will see you on my next show is on Thursday night. I think Robin Riley, I got to confirm, but I think Robin Riley will be my guest. Where can people follow you, Bronwyn?
You guys can follow me at lavender.sage_ on Instagram. I'm very easy to find. I'm a little shadow banned right now, so you might have to type the whole thing out, but that's where I put all of my energy towards posting and advocating and everything. There's also a lot of mom stuff and baking on there because, but I do.
Well, all right. I appreciate you coming on, and you can stick around for post-broadcast discussion. I got to make fun of you a little more and take some notes on some of these resources. But I appreciate it, and we will see you viewers on Thursday night.
Amazing.